over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff going on over there right now at the website. I posted my Week 2 college football situational betting tips piece earlier this morning. Yesterday, I posted my college football power ratings, as well as my opening line reports for both college football and the NFL. Definitely seen some movement here as, look, sharp bettors do not take holidays off. They did not take Monday off. We saw some moves in both college football and the NFL, so you always want to be paying attention to that type of stuff. We cover a lot of those different types of things over at BangTheBook.com. We got a couple of soccer previews for you for the Champions League as well as the Europa League from Admir Algic, so make sure you head on over and check those out. I'll preview this weekend's NASCAR races probably here this afternoon. We'll have some stuff coming up for you later on in the week with college football and NFL system picks, picks of the week, totals of the week, all kinds of good stuff going on over at the website. As you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. Two guests on the program here today. We fire things up with Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
All right, Adam, it's time. Let's go, man.
Yes, sir. You don't have any free Sundays now for a very long time. I know you and I were talking about that a little bit actually this past Sunday. But you know what, man? We wouldn't have it any other way in this business.
No, you're right. It's funny. You know, you laugh, and I even say it to Chuck Esposito at Sunset Station. I shouldn't say this too loud, but honestly, there's nowhere I'd rather be with all the games on. And if you come to Vegas, folks, if you're out there, you're coming in. We have a great Sunday football watch party in the Showroom Club Madrid at Sunset Station. But all the games are on. It's in proximity to the book. You've got the apps now, Adam, and literally it's action morning, noon, and night. And you know the NFL's awesome. Let's cut to the chase. The funny thing is, buddy, I was just going to say real quick. It's been about 6 years now, I guess, that I've been doing this thing on Sundays out there. And in the past, I had the Sunday ticket thing. And I would much rather be doing what I'm doing because when I'd have the Sunday ticket, and I wanted to focus, I like the Bills a lot, so I focus on the Bills. Well, the Bills game go to commercial. All right, I'm going to scan around the league. I swear to God, you go to the other 7 early games, and you're flipping around. They're all in commercial at the same time. I mean, yeah, I'm done with that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's certainly a great atmosphere for watching football in any of the sports books out there, but definitely there with you with that watch party there at Club Madrid. And before we get into the NFL, which I know is obviously your passion between the two types of football that we talk about here on the show, let's take a look at the college football market for a minute. Week 1 in the books. Last night, the final game, Notre Dame takes out Louisville 35-17. The Cardinals do get that cover, though, for anybody that took the plus 19, really any number that was out there on that game. But with week 1 in the books, Brian, any observations, anything that you picked up on that you want to share with our listeners here going into week 2?
I think it's another college football season. I mean, the bad beats are all documented. Everybody talks about, the bad beats in the Northwestern game and the bad beats in the Oregon-Auburn game. Yes. I mean, you had the right opinion and you lost. I'd rather have right-side losers and talk about a bad beat than not having a clue. But the reality of it is the bad beat's a bad beat. Well, half the people won. I mean, so there was the lucky win side of it. Nobody ever called it that. It's the bad beat. But the odds makers do a terrific job. And I think that's pretty prevalent. Again, you look at the Oklahoma game the other night, the first half total, you get a field goal at the last second, like with 20 seconds to go with Houston. And, there's the side, they cover, and the game's going to stay under the total. They kick a squib kick. 2 plays later, Oklahoma gets a chip shot field goal, and the kid misses it. His second field goal he misses, or the first half would have gone over. So, the books are going nuts with all these plays. So, the odds makers are all over it.
Yeah, and that's the thing about college football, and I think that, this is something that we've come to expect here in week 1. It's sloppy. There are a lot of turnovers, and also there were a lot of teams that blew fourth-quarter leads in week 1. And, again, you just want to put all this context, into the proper mindset here of you will have some right side losers. You will have some wrong side winners, probably more frequently in college football than you will in any other sport. But you don't want to overreact to what you just saw. And also, you want to keep in mind, there are some teams that probably would have won the game if they weren't -4 in turnover margin. There are some teams that would not have had a prayer if they weren't +3 in turnover margin. These are the things you have to factor in with college football.
Listen, there's nothing drives me more crazy than coaches mismanaging games, helping with a goofball decision. Well, what was Malzahn doing? He doesn't go for 2. They don't go for 2. And Oregon gets a Hail Mary into the end zone, would have beat them. That drives me nuts. But you know what? The players, I think, the bettors, make some of the same decisions. Like, a good buddy of mine, we're having this healthy debate. He says, the Oklahoma game, the quarterback from Oklahoma, what's the kid doing in there throwing the ball with 14 seconds left on the play clock? And like, that's got to be part of your handicap. It's like preseason football where you're handicapped in the fourth quarter. In games like that, or games that are going to get away, the backdoor cover is always in play, but the total is always in play. And the reality is, when you look at some of these games, even if you wanted to say the Oklahoma-Houston game, but even the bigger games like Clemson, when those games are big blowouts, the underdog is going to keep their starters in, and there's a dose of respectability for them at the end of the game, but the backups are going to come in. It's like a preseason game. The bigger the spread, if you get a 20, 24-point spread, the backups are going to be in for the big favorite if they've got the big lead. The other team's starters will remain in to give the game a dose of respectability. And as you saw with the Oklahoma game, like, well, why did the kid throw the ball with 14 seconds left on the play clock? It's because he wants that kid, a freshman, to get a taste of it and know how to run the offense the way they want to run the offense, so that when his day comes, he's gotten a taste of experience. These are things deep into games you have to factor in when you're handicapping on the front end.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and especially at this time of year. I mean, unless it's a marquee type of game with maybe some college football playoff implications, like in LSU, Texas, or in Oregon, Auburn, something like that, these teams aren't going to sit on the football. They're not going to sit on the lead. They're going to run their offenses, whether it's with the starters or with the backups, because they need to get into midseason form. They don't get preseason games to work out all the kinks. So, even though you get a second half blowout or something like that, you may still get a lot of points in that second half. The over may still come through simply because these coaches are running their offenses. They're not taking a foot off the gas. You don't do that until later in the year when these games start to matter a lot more. You don't worry about, anything here at this time of the year except for getting those reps in. So you definitely have to keep that in mind. Even if the game looks like a blowout, in the second half, it may still be played at the same tempo and the same pace that the first half was.
Well, and I would make the case, not every game, it depends who's playing, how the game was going. I would make the case that the over is more likely because of all the reasons we just documented. I'll give you one more crossover analogy because, to me, once you get into conference play and the tighter the games, these are moments that these kids aren't going to see the field again as the season gets going on down the line. The analogy would be, a good basketball team in the first round of the NCAA tournament laying 18.5, and they get a 23-point lead with 6 minutes to go, and here comes the bench. And then the other team comes back, and they lose by 15.5. But the reality of it is those kids on the bench in the first game or the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, that's literally their swan song. That's it for them. They're not going to see the court anymore, so the coach throws them a bone and gets them in there. And that's what happens in these bigger spread games where the coach says, here's an opportunity for me to get these guys in, underclassmen, get some work, get a taste of live action so that they got a little experience, and come next year when it's their turn, they got a taste of it. But they're not going to see the field in the back third of the season. So these opportunities still present themselves right out of the gate.
Now, like I said at the top of the segment here, one of my takeaways from week one, and this will be the case in week two as well, there were some sloppy games. Turnovers, mishaps, overthrows, all kinds of stuff, timing issues. You can do as much as possible to simulate game conditions, but you really can't do it until you get out there between the lines in front of those large crowds. That brings me over to the NFL. I know we're talking about professionals versus, 18 to 22-year-old kids, but there are some teams here in the NFL where their first-team offenses have not sniffed the field of gameplay in the preseason. Some quarterbacks that haven't had any timing outside of practice with their receivers. Do you worry about that at all here going into week one of the NFL season?
Certainly. Shaking the rust off. Week one, don't overreact. And here's what will happen, too, Adam. The numbers in the NFL are more volatile than they've ever been before. It's been like a 2-year thing now where based on the result of a game this Sunday, you'll see a number next week where you just shake your head. And then some properties have numbers up for all week 17, all games. Like week 2's already up or games throughout the course of the year. And you'll look, and a number that could be up now for a week 2 game, it could flop 5 points. It could shift favorites, all based on the result of a game. And, we warn everybody, don't overreact to what you last witnessed. And, oh, by the way, week 2 is the most unique year of the NFL season. And believe me, the players overreact. But know this, teams know that number. If you go 0-2, 87% of the time, you will miss the playoffs. So week 2, even though you're sitting, oh, boy, they look great last week, and that other team look awful. Well, the team that lost that game is coming in here as motivated as they can be and with a sense of urgency and almost playing it like a playoff game because they know their fortunes of making the postseason. The odds are stacked against them if they go 0-2. So week 2 is always that bizarre week where you get some results go, wow, I didn't see that coming. Well, it kind of makes sense when you step back and think of that one factor that they know if they go 0-2, they're probably toast at the end of December.
And it's kind of funny here. I mean, obviously legalization and PASPA being overturned is great for everybody. It opens up the market to a lot more operators, a lot more states, a lot more people now have easier access to betting. But when you talk about overreaction, when you talk about, some of the narratives that get created out there in the mainstream media, I saw one beat writer yesterday who tweeted something to the effect of how the Ravens opened -4 in Miami. Now the line's up to as high as -7. And he's considering the Laramie Tunsil and Kenny Stills trade as an adjustment of 3 points to the line. We all know that that's not accurate. If we follow this industry, we know that's not true. Baltimore was taking money before that deal because people liked the Ravens going into the season, liked the Ravens in this matchup against a Miami team that seemed to have no clue what was going on in the preseason. But that misinformation, those narratives are going to be everywhere now with so many outlets invested in gambling coverage. So that's another wrinkle into this equation here where there's going to be a lot of bad information out there, and it's more important than ever for bettors to sort through what actually matters, what's actually accurate against what doesn't matter and what isn't accurate.
Well, the other thing it happens every year, and it's kind of crazy. I mean, what you and I on gatherings like this, we talked about this stuff all summer long. These numbers for week 1 of the NFL have been up for 8 to 10 weeks, and you saw some slight movement on a handful of games, and then here we get to Tuesday on week 1, and you're starting to see numbers dance all over the place. Did that much change? Honestly, I mean, did that much change in the last 10 weeks? Okay, Tunsil's gone. All right, the guy's a terrific left tackle. Miami wasn't going to be good to begin with, and now Miami just keeps hearing all week long, how bad they really are, and they're pro athletes. I'm not saying I'm sitting here, running to the window to play Miami, but and I know. What do we always say? You're laying double digits in the NFL, you'll go broke. They're pro players. These guys are playing for jobs. And the worst NFL team. I love that discussion. Right, that comes out every year. What would the line be if Alabama played the Dolphins? Miami could name the score. It's a joke. Every year you'll get that topic, the best college team against the scrub NFL team. The worst NFL team could beat them by 50.
Yeah, well, and speaking of 50, Alabama's a 53-point favorite this week against New Mexico State. But anyway, getting back to the NFL here, let's look at Thursday night's game. Green Bay and Chicago. Chicago down to a 3-point favorite pretty much market-wide, and in fact, 3 flat at 5 dimes. Some places 3 minus 15. 5 dimes actually 3 minus 10. And again, I'll look at the offshore market for the most part here because that's still the most available to our listeners of the show. But certainly shop around for the best odds, whether it's a brick and mortar or an offshore, whatever the case may be. But Chicago's down to a 3-point favorite here. And you've got Green Bay, and Matt LaFleur didn't really play too much of anybody in the preseason. You've got Matt Nagy, who kind of takes the preseason pretty easy as well. What are you looking for here in this Thursday night game, Brian?
What I'd say to you is, as you alluded to, I think there's a lot of questions. It's like a blanket thing. I think the Bears with the Mac trade, they got a bounce in their step last year. And I think, I don't know if overachieve is the word, but they kind of escalated the process a little bit. It's like maybe Houston winning the World Series maybe a year before you thought they would. The question is, now you've got the weight of expectations, and do they sustain it? The running game, they like Montgomery. Cohen's a nice weapon. So we'll see what Chicago brings to the table offensively. We know their defense is going to be good. The thing with the Packers, new head coach, and they didn't give Rodgers a lot of help. At least it looks that way on paper offensively. But what they did was invest in the defense. And in a weird way, that is helping Aaron Rodgers and not keeping that Green Bay defense on the field all the time. And Rodgers is constantly in rally mode. I think the improved defense for the Packers is something I'll be watching. Because Rodgers will make anybody look good. He's that good. And we can talk about the soap opera. Does he like the coach and all this? Who cares? Yeah, let's see what they do on the field. These two teams know each other. They hate each other. And the Bears have a good defense. And I think the Packers, with the work they did in the offseason, have a sneaky good defense, too. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
I'm really curious about this game. I won't have any action on it, but I'm very curious to see how the Packers look. I have a pretty good idea of how the Bears are going to look. I think offensively they look pretty good. I think defensively, without Vic Fangio, we could see a drop-off here from this team. Of course, he's now the head coach with the Denver Broncos. And by the way, especially as we look at this Green Bay side of things, Matt LaFleur, a rapid riser in the industry, of course, another branch of the Sean McVay coaching tree, was the OC there in 2017. With Tennessee last year in 2018, look, Marcus Mariota and the backups who play when he's injured, they're not Aaron Rodgers. We all know that. Tennessee did a very good job running the football. Nathaniel Hackett, also a big upgrade here, going from Jacksonville, where he had Blake Bortles, to now having Aaron Rodgers. But we've got 8 new head coaches, 17 new offensive coordinators, 9 new defensive coordinators in the NFL this year. Green Bay, I don't know what I'm going to get all the way around. Chicago, I have a better idea, but how much does that defense regress without Fangio and with some of the personnel losses? I don't know. This is a game shrouded in question marks for me.
No, I hear you. I think in week one, much the same way that you kind of got that scenario in college football, you kind of want to see, what these teams are going to bring to the table. But I think in the NFL we have way more information, than we did in college football, at least information maybe to a degree that you believe you can trust. The other thing, you got to take into account now all of a sudden, Bud, is this storm with Jacksonville and Carolina. And, their routine during the week, you've got to believe now is going to be disrupted. I'm not sure about Carolina just yet, but I believe Jacksonville switched their days off to earlier in the week. Maybe it's not that big a deal in a game of this nature because, for the most part, teams in the preseason start installing the game one game plan throughout the course of the preseason. So maybe it won't be that disruptive. But, clearly Carolina and Jacksonville, those players are going to have other things on their mind this week.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I've talked about this a lot before, and I know you joke with me every time I bring up circadian rhythm, but, these players are creatures of habit. They practice at the same times. They eat at the same times. They have a schedule that they're accustomed to. And when you get these deviations, whether it's weather or, some sort of other circumstance, it can be a challenge. Now, at least in week one, you're not fully into your routine as of yet, but still, for a team like Jacksonville, as you mentioned, this storm could be really, really bad there. We don't necessarily know. The forecasters don't even know yet. No, it won't affect the gameplay on Sunday in terms of whether or not the game will be played, but it will affect the preparation period for Jacksonville. They're worrying about moving their families around, getting them inland or whatever else. So, yeah, that's an excellent point to make here about that situation specifically. And look, this probably, I hate to say this, and certainly best wishes to everybody in Florida, Georgia, the Carolinas, this won't be the last one of these that we see threaten the U.S. this year either. So, these are factors you have to consider from a handicapping standpoint, as cold and callous as it seems.
Well, and I'll tell you, you want I don't even know. I can't pronounce it whenever you say it. The circadian. What is it?
Circadian rhythm. Yeah,
that thing. I'll give you one to watch, but it's going to be really, really intriguing. And that's the Saints. And we all think the Saints are awesome. But they play the Texans on a Monday night. Then they go cross country, albeit the Rams have to fly home too because they're playing on the East Coast. But on a short week, they got to go and play the big revenge game against the Rams out on the West Coast. I would envision, I haven't heard anything yet, I'd have to believe they'd be considering staying out there. If they don't, then they're going to fly home and fly up to Seattle. I mean, New Orleans in the first 3 weeks, don't take the Texans lightly, but if they're looking ahead to the big revenge game with the Rams, flying cross-country, and then have another game up on the West Coast, I've got to believe they stay out west. If they don't, they're walking into a buzzsaw in week 3.
Yeah, and these are important spots you want to look at. It's one of the reasons why I'm kind of sour on the Browns for this year, because they played 3 short week games in the first 5 weeks. They play a couple Monday nights and a Sunday night. And those Sunday night games, you don't think of them as short weeks, but Monday is an absolute waste when you play Sunday night. So, it is still a little bit of a short week. And by the way, there was a weather system in the Gulf of Mexico that was just kind of starting up a little bit. I don't know anything about the forecast for later in the week, but of course, keep that in mind with New Orleans playing Monday night, then having to fly out, a little bit later on in the week. So, all these weather considerations, travel spots, situational spots, that's kind of the hallmark of my NFL handicapping, because unlike college, where there are very clear talent distinctions between two teams, all these guys in the NFL are pros. So I tend to look more at that situational handicapping element, which is what we're already doing here in week 1, and that's kind of by design.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we talk about the nightmare that is, teams that have to play on a Thursday night. I mean, that's a joke. The road team is at such a massive disadvantage. But even a Monday night game, like you said, changes your routine slightly. But you know what? More than routine, Adam, I mean, every play out there is a car accident. It's 24 hours less that these guys can recover. I mean, that's the big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. And people are going to say, well, it's early in the year, they should be fine, but maybe not. You would like to think everybody's as healthy as they're going to be at this time of the year, but
look at the injury report. Look at the injury. These guys get in throughout 5 weeks of camp. Honestly, camp is harder than the season. I mean, there's like guys all banged up. They've been running hard, going crazy, for 6 weeks now. It bumps and bruises all over the place. Honestly, once you get into the season, they're all about trying to keep these guys upright. You may not be on the injury report, but probably every guy coming into these games, even though they're not playing in preseason games, they're out there banging away in training camp and practice. These guys are maybe more nicked up now than they'll be in week 7.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of muscle strains and stuff like that. And also, training camp in hot, humid conditions that you don't see during the regular season, all that type of stuff. And, these guys, they get paid for the regular season too. So they're going to be out there as opposed to, some of the stuff that goes on in the preseason. But in any event, a couple more games I want to tackle here with you, Brian. Game 457, 458, Buffalo and the Jets. Jets a 3-point favorite here, but I just mentioned 8 new head coaches, 17 offensive coordinators, 9 defensive coordinators. If you're looking for continuity in week 1, not many teams have more of it than the Buffalo Bills.
Well, full disclosure, right? But I am objective when it comes to, making money on this stuff. But I believe in the Bills. I enjoy watching the Bills, but I'm very cautiously optimistic that this is a team can win 9 games this year. This is a game I'm convinced, and said it all summer long, I think 2.5s will pop up. I think money's going to come in on Buffalo, and it flies under the radar that, generically speaking, we'll play the quiz game. I'll pop quiz for you. Okay, the Bills, for them to be successful, what's got to happen?
Josh Allen's got to get better.
Oh, there we go. Okay, great. Okay, you're you and everybody else, and that's a big yes. But no one talks about the fact they had the second-ranked defense in the NFL last year. One guy left, Kyle Williams, and they drafted Ed Oliver to replace him. And everybody is back. That defense kept them in every game last year. Josh Allen had a light bulb go off at the end of the year, and he was running around doing it all by himself. Now in free agency, in the draft, they got offensive linemen. They've massively upgraded their wide receivers, the tight end position. This offense should be markedly better, but it's the defense that no one talks about. They're number 1 in the NFL against the pass last year. I think, honestly, I look at the schedule, I think the Bills win in week 1. They turn around, come play the Giants in week 2, and the Giants game scares the living hell out of me. Because, oh, boy, look, they beat the Jets. Now they're going to play the Giants. But that could be one of those scenarios. If it pans out that way, that would be the Bills feel good about themselves. Giants coming home if they lose to Dallas. Home opener playing it like a playoff game because they can't go 0-2. So don't go nuts with what you watch this week because next week will be a completely different animal. I'm already thinking of how the first 2 games play out.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what you need to do here in the NFL. By the way, the Jets, of course, with Adam Gase, the head coach, probably going to call his own plays despite Dowell Loggins being the OC. And then defensive coordinator Greg Williams, who I know very well, lines his safeties up about 25 yards behind the line of scrimmage. So could be a bit of an adjustment period for the Jets in week 1. Brian, one more game I want to touch on here quickly. Sunday Night Football. Steelers, Patriots. Patriots 5.5, 6-point favorite out there, although some places have gone down as low as 5 on this game. All the talk about the Browns here, maybe the Steelers a little bit undervalued coming into the season.
Well, I can't wait. Actually, I can't because football's just starting, but hockey will be back. In hockey, I am all about running around trying to find out when are teams having a ceremony. They're retiring a guy's number, or the Blues are going to raise the cup to the banners, and I blindly play the visiting team in the first period and play them in the game because they come out, warm up, and then they got to stand around and do the stick tap and the ceremony, and the visiting team's chewing on nails. So I always love the road team in ceremony games. For whatever reason, that angle does not work with the Super Bowl champ. But Pittsburgh, to me, is a mission team. I think the Antonio Brown thing, the way that season ended, and now he's out of there, I really think this is a team that's going to kind of circle the wagons a little bit. Roethlisberger's going to a little different approach, quick passes, shorter passes. If Connor runs the ball really well, they've got the burners in Washington and Schuster that can stretch the field. He's a great player, but in a weird way, I can just envision this at the end of the year. these guys that maybe won't say a damn word all year long, but at the end of the year go, you know, they Antonio Brown is bulletin board material for this Pittsburgh team. I think they're going to have a big year if Roethlisberger stays upright.
Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how can people check out those two shows?
Oh, man, it's going to be a wild week, Adam. Away we go. Sportsbookradio.com. You can go to kshp.com. Listen live, noon to 2 Pacific time, weekdays. So we got you covered, all the sportsbook directors, both sides of the counter, out on the road doing remotes, football season. We do our watch parties Sunday at Sunset Station, hockey parties to come there. It's just the beginning, my friend. It's going to be great.
Yeah, for sure. And, of course, you can check out Brian's videos over on our Bang the Book YouTube page. You can follow him on Twitter as well, at Brian Blessing. Brian, appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, pal. Have a good one. We'll talk next week.
There you go. There's Brian Blessing again, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline, kshp.com for those. Check him out on our Bang the Book YouTube page as well.